Hello there! Today my video for the day is my experience with the Tech 21 SansAmp Para Driver DI. There it is. Now I got this pedal recently. This pedal, preamp, DI, could call it lots of different things. It's all of those. And I'm pretty impressed. Although my main instrument has been guitar for many years, I'm not a huge pedal guy. I have gravitated towards natural sounds, and I've always preferred, at least up until now, investing in like microphones and different instruments and that type of thing versus investing in a ton of pedals. But I must say, like I said, I'm pretty impressed with this because it's going to be helpful for me on quite a few different duties. So I play electric guitar, acoustic guitar, bass guitar, and not only do I play these different instruments, but also this pedal is going to be helpful for me both for recording and live, which is pretty impressive to be able to be that helpful in that many different situations. And why is it that helpful? Well, it's just quite a versatile sort of saturation box, preamp, DI at the same time, and the controls are really awesome, meaning that already with a lot of the pedals, you have a hard time getting a mid knob. So it's already awesome that they have a mid knob. Not only do they have a mid knob, but they have a sweepable mid knob. So here, in this case, when I was just using it, I was pulling out some of the lower mids. I don't know, it's got to be around 200 hertz, and the mid knob is a little bit less than neutral. So I was pulling out a bit of 200 hertz, which is a classic move in mixing, pulling out some of the lower mids. And another classic move in mixing for the mids is to boost the upper mids. And here you can do one or the other. You're not limited, already, like I said, it's difficult to get a mid knob on a pedal. And then even if you get a mid knob, you're usually stuck with a certain frequency. And you're lucky if they tell you what it is. Of course, you can experiment and figure out what works best, but here you can set the mid frequency to anything between 160 hertz and 3 kilohertz, I believe, yeah. And the default frequency is 750 hertz in the middle there. That's pretty awesome. So that's the number one awesome thing about this pedal, and the number two awesome thing about this pedal is the blend knob. Because you don't, again, on pedals, the more expensive ones sometimes have blend knobs, but not even always. So having those two, basically a mid knob that you can change the frequency of, and a blend knob, just makes this awesome. And so yeah, I guess now, well, we'll just finish out. Since I told you what I like best about the knobs, we can go over the knobs very quickly, just so that if you're not familiar with it, you see what's on this pedal. So we have level. Level is basically your output level that you adjust at the end in order to make sure that by adding the pedal, you didn't increase or decrease the volume too much. Then we have the typical treble, mid, bass. Like I said, I already went over the mid knob and how much I like what they did there. I already spoke about the blend knob. For those of you that don't know what the blend knob is, it just means how much of the signal is being affected by this pedal. So now that's a good question. It just occurred to me, I'm not sure whether the EQ is being affected or not by the blend knob. But the main use for blend knobs, and I assume it's the case here, is that when you add saturation, which is here with the drive knob, that's your level of saturation or distortion. Particularly for bass guitar, if you add a lot of saturation, the fatness of the bass frequencies is going to go away, because saturation essentially increases the upper harmonics with respect to the lower harmonics, meaning the bass. And so if you get a really saturated bass tone, what can end up happening is that it ends up sounding like a guitar, which is not usually what you want, unless you have another bass instrument that's going to carry the bass in your mix. And so using the blend knob, you can, if you like, set a high level of drive, and then if you put the blend knob in the middle on its neutral setting, then you'll have half a saturated signal and half of the original signal, which is often a nice blend, but of course you'll want to tweak it to taste. But that's what the blend knob is about. And yes, moving on. So we have an input, of course. Well, a nice thing that they have added here is a parallel input, meaning that if you want to record say you're recording electric bass and you want to record a version of what comes directly out of your electric bass, then you can send the parallel output to another recording input. Or if you're playing live, you can send the parallel out to a different amp or a different input, if you like. So that's kind of cool to have basically a splitter built in, which a lot of DIs do have. And then we have a 1/4-inch jack output and an XLR output, which is what a DI typically has. You also have the possibility, which is very nice, of powering the device using XLR phantom power through this output. You can select it through this button, or you can use a battery, or you can use a AC adapter. So lots of power options. That's really cool, depending on your situation, whether live or recording at home or recording in a studio. And then we have a pad, -20 dB pad, which could be useful because I have a passive DI, and the level that comes out of the passive DI is quite low, but I will tell you that the level that comes out of this XLR DI is quite high, maybe in some circumstances too high, so it's nice to have a -20 dB pad there. Got a rumble filter, basically a high-pass filter in case you want to remove some low end. Could be useful, like in concert on an acoustic guitar, maybe that's getting a lot of rumble. And then an air button, which is kind of like a little presence boost, which is a nice option to have. So there we go. I went over all of the features of this very complete pedal, DI or preamp, call it what you will. So now let's get to my use of it on various instruments, because that's part of the reason I bought it. The SansAmp range of products that Tech21 makes often are very specific to certain instruments, or even more than that. They have a specific amp sound that they're trying to emulate for electric guitar or bass guitar or whatever. But in my case, since I like playing acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass guitar, as I already explained, the fact that it's not specific to an instrument is really a plus for me personally. You might, I mean, I think that the saturation sound on this sounds really good. Some people might say it's, again, generic in a certain sense, but I don't think anybody could say it sounds bad. I think it sounds really good, in fact. And on all those instruments, surprisingly enough. Now, let's talk about bass guitar first, because I think this pedal, like some of the other SansAmp products from what I've heard, is just a superstar on bass. It's just, it sounds like lightning and thunder. I mean, it's just crazy, the sound that you can get out of your bass guitar just with this, you know, and I can understand why some people just want to record direct with this. It's simple. You just come with you don't worry about bringing your amp. You just bring this with you to your bass gig and you're good to go. It sounds freaking awesome. It's quite amazing the amount of bass frequencies that this thing puts out on an electric bass. Because I have some other similar products to compare to, like the Bass Soul Food. I also have before I got this product, I was using, I have a Radial Engineering passive DI that I was using with the Bass Soul Food pedal made by Electro Harmonics. But the amount of bass that comes out of this pedal on an electric bass guitar, both out of the 1/4-inch jack and the DI, compared to what comes out of the 1/4-inch jack on the Bass Soul Food pedal, there's no comparison. I don't know how they get so much saturation and so much bass coming out at the same time. I don't know what they did with their circuits, but they did, you know, they worked some sort of magic on this SansAmp pedal. So I totally get now why there's so many rave reviews of SansAmp for bass players on the internet. So I just wanted to start with that. Again, if you're only an electric bass player, you might want to look at one of the DIs that they have that model a specific amp to get a little bit more of a specific character that goes with your style of music or whatever. But this already by itself is pretty damn awesome. So that's electric bass. Let's move on to acoustic guitar for a change. I was very pleasantly surprised with acoustic guitar. Now, of course, when I'm talking about acoustic guitar, I'm talking about DIing an acoustic guitar, meaning using the electroacoustic pickup on my acoustic guitar, which is what I do when I play concerts. So I was interested in this pedal for that, and I really like what it does. You know, the typical acoustic guitar pickup is not, it's kind of blah. It's not the end of the world, it's not terrible, but it's kind of not that inspiring. And with all the controls on this, you can really tweak your sound, up that saturation a bit to get it more present and have it cut a little bit more. You know, depending on how much you want to push it, you can even start making it sound a little bit more like an electric guitar. But what I was liking was just keeping the blend knob on the neutral position, meaning 50-50. 50% original signal and 50% the affected signal. And then boosting up the drive to taste. And then it still sounds like a nice acoustic guitar, but it gives it this really nice bite and presence in the mix, so that it doesn't sound so blah or so boring, so limpid, so I don't know. And so yeah, an acoustic guitar for a live scenario, for running your DI through this, running basically, like I said, the acoustic pickup through, I think it's quite cool. And so the last application is electric guitar, which I've been messing around with, and I'm interested in this pedal as well for electric guitar in the same scenario as, so in two scenarios basically, but firstly, just like for bass guitar, using it to replace an amp, This way you can show up at a gig with your electric guitar and this pedal and not really have to worry about bringing your electric guitar amp to get an amazing sound. Now I already have a cheap Fender amp emulation pedal, which maybe I'll go over. It's not so great, but it's pretty cheap. And so what I was doing to get a pretty cool sound was putting this first, plugging my electric guitar directly into this, playing around with the settings, and then after that going into the amp modeling pedal, which has its own bass, mid, high, drive, etc. And then going out to a PA speaker and seeing, how I would like that in a live scenario. So that was really pretty cool. I really appreciated it in that context. And those of you who have tweaked around with saturation, I'm starting to see just how much it adds to have several layers or several saturation effects in series, one after the other, instead of just trying to get to your goal of saturation just with one pedal, which either, if you get it as saturated as you want, often it sounds, you hear it just a bit too much. And so having two in parallel, like having a lesser amount of saturation on this pedal and then on the amp modeling pedal, I get up to higher global level of saturation, but without sort of very artificial affected sound that I don't like when you try to do it all in one step. And then on top of it, you can always back off the blend knob. Here I have the blend knob all the way up because I was just using it for electric guitar, just like I described. But if it's still sounding too affected for you, you can play with the blend knob to roll back the amount of saturation in your signal without changing the level of saturation, which again is the drive knob. So I'm really liking that as well. I also think, of course, it'll be useful as a sort of overdrive pedal on amps. And by the way, I just did a video on using it in that situation with one of my tube amps, the Fender Blues Junior. So you can check that out on my channel. It's a shootout of this pedal versus the Electro Harmonix bass soul flute pedal used as an overdrive pedal for electric lead guitar. So I haven't been doing too many shootouts as of yet, but I'd like to get there. I am not the most hardy of adventurers when it comes to video editing. I tend to get burnt out because it tends to be very time consuming, but I'm trying to get to that. So there's that video for you if you are interested in hearing this pedal as an overdrive pedal on electric guitar through a tube amp. So yeah, I think I covered all the different applications, which are quite numerous, right? Can be used as an overdrive pedal, as a DI, and as a amp replacement, and on acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and electric bass. Or I haven't tried it on I have a Fender Kingman acoustic bass as well. I haven't tried it out on that yet, but I bet it's gonna be freaking awesome as well. So I'm really happy with the quality of the pedal, and I'm really happy with how many scenarios it can tackle with all of these buttons and knobs and different ways it can be tweaked. It's just pretty damn impressive. I looked at the SansAmp pedals at some point over the last few years, and I was a little hesitant to put the money in because it's pretty expensive, but I'm seriously pretty impressed. So there you go. I think we've been over it all. I am out.